Without knowing he was a duke and the owner of the place where her family lived, the bride threw mud. Before we begin this beautiful period romance story, tell me in the comments where you're listening from. I love knowing where you're joining me from. Eleanor Whitmore was running late again. Her boots slapped against the wet road as she hurried down the lane, basket clutched tight against her side, skirts lifted just enough to avoid the worst of the mud. Drops from the morning's rain still slipped from the hedges and dampened her sleeves. She barely noticed. Her mind was crowded with numbers and dates and the sound of her mother's worried voice. "Do not forget the flour, Ellie," her mother had said, following her to the door. "Not the cheap one. Your father's stomach cannot bear it. And ask Mr. Ford about the account. Tell him we will pay the rest soon. Tell him your father has spoken to Mr. Hale." Mr. Hale. Thomas. The wedding. Her stomach twisted. She rounded the bend where the lane narrowed between a stone wall and a ditch. The village lay just beyond, its roofs hidden by the rise of the hill. The air smelled of wet earth and wood smoke. Eleanor drew a breath and picked up her pace. Then she saw the carriage. It stood squarely in the middle of the narrowest part of the lane, gleaming black, its wheels sunk deep into the soft earth. Two glossy horses stamped and huffed impatiently. A coachman sat high on the box, reins loose in his hands, and just ahead of the carriage a man stood with his back half-turned, as though the world belonged to him and he had all the time it contained. He was alone, not speaking, just watching the fields on the far side of the wall. The lane, thanks to him, was entirely blocked. Eleanor stopped so suddenly that the basket bumped her ribs. "Of course," she muttered under her breath. "Why should anyone imagine a lane is for walking?" She glanced behind her. Another woman with a bundle under her arm had just appeared, followed by a boy driving a cart with two small pigs. They were already slowing, eyes on the carriage. "Is something amiss, Miss Whitmore?" the woman called. "Only that the world has grown too small for our betters," Eleanor replied, though her cheeks warmed the moment she said it. She edged closer to the carriage, careful not to slip. The man had not yet turned. His coat was of fine dark cloth, his boots polished even in this miserable lane. He looked like someone passing through on his way to somewhere grand, somewhere that certainly was not Rosebery. "Sir," Eleanor called, her breath still quick from her hurry. "Excuse me." He did not move. She swallowed and tried again, louder. "Sir, you are blocking the lane." This time he turned. He was younger than she expected, perhaps not yet 30, with strong features and dark hair too smooth to be anything but carefully brushed. His eyes were unreadable, cool and distant. He took her in with a single glance, damp curls escaping her bonnet, plain dress spattered with mud, worn boots, the basket clutched like a shield. His voice, when it came, was calm. "I am aware that the lane is narrow." "Then you must also be aware," Eleanor said, "that no one can pass." He glanced past her, saw the people waiting, then looked back at her. "The horses need a moment's rest," he said. "The road here is difficult." Eleanor stared at him. The absurdity of it pressed at her chest. "The horses may rest," she answered, "but we must live. Market does not wait because your carriage chose a poor place to stop." The coachman shifted on his seat, as if he sensed trouble. The pigs in the small cart behind her began to squeal softly. A faint line appeared between the stranger's brows. "Patience is a virtue, miss." She lifted her chin. "A virtue does not fill an empty pantry." "Then perhaps," he said, "you ought to rise earlier." There it was. Quiet. Smooth. Dismissal, wrapped in courtesy. Heat rose in Eleanor's face. She heard her mother's voice in her mind. "Be careful, Eleanor. Think of your father's health. Think of the rent." But the weariness of months pressed on her, and behind it a fear that never quite slept. "Sir," she said, trying once more for politeness, "if you would kindly have your coachman move the carriage to one side, we could all pass in peace." His gaze swept over the lane, the ditch, the wall. "It would be troublesome to maneuver the carriage here," he replied. "You may wait. I do not intend to remain long." Something inside her snapped. "Troublesome," she repeated. "More troublesome than an old man's hunger, than a mother's anxiety, than a girl's future." His eyes sharpened. "Do you appear fond of large statements, miss?" "I'm fond of bread," she said, "and of my father's heart continuing to beat." He said nothing. His silence was not nervous or embarrassed. It was the silence of someone unused to being pushed. Someone whose word was usually enough to end a conversation, Behind her, the boy with the pigs muttered, "We'll never reach the green at this rate." The woman with the bundle hissed softly, "Ellie, leave it." Eleanor saw the carriage, the shine of it, the horses, the man who would not stir. She saw her mother's hands counting out coins that did not quite make a full rent. She heard her father coughing at night, and something wild and reckless rose up inside her. She bent, scooped up a handful of the wet, heavy mud from the edge of the road, straightened, and before her sense could return, her arm moved. The mud struck him squarely across the front of his coat. It landed with a dull, shocking sound, splattering across the immaculate fabric, spattering his gloves, leaving a dark stain on the cloth that had certainly never known such indignity. The pigs fell silent. The lane itself seemed to hold its breath. Eleanor's own heart stopped. The man looked down at his coat. For a heartbeat he only stared at it, as if not quite believing what his eyes told him. Then he lifted his gaze to her again. No shouting, no storm of anger. Just a new, cutting focus. "Did you mean to do that?" he asked quietly. Her hand still hung in the air. She slowly lowered it, fingers shaking, mud sliding from her palm. "Yes," she heard herself say, though her voice sounded distant to her own ears. "If you stand in a lane like a wall, you must expect to look like one." The boy behind her let out a sound that was half laugh, half gasp. The woman clutched her bundle tighter. The stranger's jaw tightened. A muscle moved once near his temple. "Your name," he said. "No," Eleanor answered before she could stop herself. "No?" His brows rose slightly. "I do not see why you should have it," she said, fighting to keep her voice level. "You are the one who placed yourself in the way of honest folk." His gaze did not leave her face. "You have just thrown mud at a gentleman," he said. "You are fortunate I do not demand more than your name." "Are you?" she asked, and only then did she hear how close she was to trembling. "A gentleman, I mean. I suppose that depends on how quickly you move your carriage." For a moment, something like amusement flickered in his eyes. It vanished as quickly as it came. He turned his head slightly. "Rogers." The coachman straightened at once. "Yes, sir?" "Back the carriage, give them space." "Yes, sir." The man looked back at Eleanor. "You may pass." That was all. No gesture toward the mud, no lecture, no order. Just those 3 words, as if this were a small favor he granted in his own time. It should have cooled her anger. Instead, it made her feel as though she had been measured and put aside, like something curious, but unimportant. "Thank you," she said stiffly. She stepped carefully around him, the mud sucking at her boots. As she passed, she felt his eyes on her. She refused to look up. The woman with the bundle hurried after her, whispering urgently, "Eleanor Whitmore, are you mad? Do you know who that might be?" "A man who cannot tell a lane from his own drawing room," Eleanor said, still shaking. "That is all." "The cut of that coat," the woman said, glancing back, "and that carriage, you will be in trouble." "Most likely," Eleanor murmured. She half expected the man to call her back, to demand her name again, to threaten her with something she could not even imagine. But he did not. The carriage creaked and groaned as the coachman maneuvered it to the side. The boy drove his pig cart past, eyes wide. Voices rose behind her, a mixture of shocked whispers and excited guesses. By the time she reached the edge of the village green, Eleanor's hands had steadied, but her stomach still fluttered. She stopped near the pump, set down her basket, and looked back. The carriage was just cresting the rise, moving out of the lane toward the main road that led up toward the manor. The man stood beside it for a moment longer, speaking to the coachman. Even at a distance, she could see that his coat bore the mark of her hand, a smudge across the fine cloth that no brush could entirely erase. "What have you done, Ellie?" She turned. Thomas Hale stood a few paces away, hat in his hands, his fair hair slightly damp from the rain. He was taller than she, broad in the shoulders, with a straightforward face that usually calmed her. Today, he looked alarmed. "You saw?" she asked. "Half the village saw," he said. "I came down from the smithy just in time to watch you throw half the road at him." "It was not half the road," she said. "It was a handful." "Eleanor," he said, lowering his voice, "you cannot treat gentlemen in that way. There will be consequences." "He would not move his carriage," she replied. "He told me to rise earlier." Thomas's mouth twitched, as if he fought a smile. That does sound like something I might wish to answer with mud, he admitted. But most men would answer with fists, not words. You are fortunate he did not. He did not seem the sort to dirty his hands, she said. Thomas glanced toward the road the carriage had taken. I did not recognize him, he said, but he was no common traveler. Did you hear his name? No, she replied. He only asked for mine. And you refused to give it, Thomas said with a sigh. Of course. She lifted her basket. I had better get the shopping done, she said. If I return late with nothing to show, my mother will scold me worse than any gentleman. Let me help, he said at once. At least let me carry the heavier things. If someone decides to drag you before the magistrate, it will be easier if I am already at your side. She could not help a small laugh at that. Very well, she said. But if they drag you too, I shall be very sorry. You will not be, he said. You will tell them it was all my idea. The market was brisk that morning. Damp air filled with the calls of traders and the clatter of carts. Eleanor kept her head down, focusing on the business at hand. She bargained for flour, for a small wedge of cheese, for a little sugar because her father liked it in his tea. Mr. Ford, the grocer, frowned at her as she hesitated over coins. Your account is already stretched, Miss Whitmore, he said. I cannot extend much more. We will pay the rest soon, she said. My father will speak to you himself if you wish. I prefer coin to words, Mr. Ford replied, but your father is an honest man. Tell him I will wait 1 more month, no more. She nodded, throat tight. On the other side of the green, 2 women bent their heads together, looking straight at her. Eleanor heard the word mud, and then quietly, fool. A group of boys pretended to fling handfuls of imaginary dirt at one another, laughing. Thomas saw her look and set his jaw. Let them talk, he said. They spoke last year when I bought that lame horse. They speak when the vicar misplaces his spectacles. They will tire of it. I do not mind them talking of me, she said softly. I mind them talking of my father and mother. Then marry me quickly, he said with a crooked half-smile. Give them something new to discuss. Mrs. Hale will drown them all in talk of pastry and pig fat, and they will forget this in a day. She did smile then, faintly. How comforting you are, she said, to promise me a future of pastry and pig fat. It is a solid future, he said. I am no gentleman with a carriage, but my boots do not sink into the lane without reason. She looked down at his boots, scuffed but sturdy. Not elegant. Reliable. Solid is not a bad word, she said. Solid may be exactly what we need. He touched the brim of his hat to her. Then I shall continue to be solid, he said. And you, if you please, will try not to throw anything else. By midday her basket was full and her coins almost gone. Thomas walked her halfway back along the lane, then turned off toward his own land, promising to call that evening if her father had no objection. The walk home felt longer. The rain had stopped entirely, leaving the air cool and still. Birds chattered in the hedges. Eleanor moved at a slower pace now, the weight of the basket pulling at her arm. Her earlier boldness had drained away, leaving behind a nervous hollow. What if he was someone important, she murmured. The carriage was gone. Only deep tracks in the mud showed where its wheels had been. She paused, toes at the edge of one of the ruts, and imagined the man's face again. The calm gaze, the faint line of impatience. Let him be a prince from London, she said aloud. He will return to his ballrooms and forget the girl with the mud. It sounded brave. It did not feel so. At the cottage, smoke trailed from the chimney. She pushed open the door with her shoulder, bringing in a gust of damp air and the scent of wet earth. Is that you, Ellie? Her mother called from the small table where she sat shelling peas. Did you get the flour? Yes, Eleanor said, setting the basket down. And Mr. Ford says he will wait another month for the rest. Bless him, her mother murmured. He has a wife with a soft heart, that is the truth of it. Your father is in the back, seeing to the tools. He has been restless all morning. Her father appeared in the doorway to the yard, wiping his hands on a rag. His hair, once dark, was now as grey as the skies had been. His shoulders stooped, but still strong. He smiled when he saw her, though the smile did not reach all the way to his eyes. Ellie, he said, did you hear the news in the village? She froze. What news? She asked. He took the basket and began to set things on the table, more to occupy his hands than because she needed the help. About the manor, he said. About the estate. The old Duke's nephew has arrived. The new master. They say he came this very morning to the village in a fine carriage to see for himself what he owns. Her heart gave a hard thump. "In a carriage?" she said. "A black one?" Her mother looked up. "You saw it?" she asked quickly. Eleanor hesitated. "I saw a carriage," she said, "and a man." Her father nodded, oblivious to the tension in her voice. "That will be him," he said, "the new Duke of Ashbourne. Henry Blackwell, they say. Came into the title after his uncle died. We have known this day would come. Men like that do not stay away forever." Her mother's hands moved faster over the peas. "Did you hear anything of what he is like?" she asked. "Kind? Harsh?" "Different tongues tell different tales," her father said. "Some say he is strict. Others say he is fair. All agree he is not poor." He forced a small laugh. "Not that it matters whether he eats off gold or silver, if we cannot pay him in copper." Eleanor leaned back against the rough wall, feeling suddenly colder. Does he own all this?" she asked. "Our fields, our cottage." Her father looked at her as if surprised she needed to ask. "Of course," he said gently. "We are tenants, Ellie. We have always been. The land is Ashbourne land. We work it for a share, and for the rent. You know this." She did, but she had not truly thought of it in the shape of a single man's face until now. Her mother set the bowl of peas aside with a small thud. "Did they say if he is changing anything?" she asked. "The leases, the rents." "They did not know," her father said. "Only that the steward was told to bring the papers to the manor. They are to be looked at again." "Looked at again?" her mother repeated. "That sounds too much like trouble." Her father rubbed a hand over his forehead. "It may mean nothing," he said. "It may mean only that the young Duke wishes to see things with his own eyes. We cannot do more than wait." Eleanor felt the room press in around her. "Father," she said quietly, "what happens if he does not wish us to stay?" He met her gaze. For a moment, the mask slipped and she saw the worry beneath. "Then we must leave," he said simply. "That is the right he holds. That has always been the way." Her mother's fingers twisted in her apron. "We have been here 20 years, she whispered. "Your father's back is bent from these fields. Your hands are rough from this soil. Surely that must count for something." "Landlords count coin," he said gently, "not calluses." Her mother's eyes shimmered, but she blinked the tears away. "Well," she said briskly, as if that could mend the crack in the air, "if the new Duke is in the village, he may have seen you there, Ellie. Did you notice anyone grand apart from the carriage?" Eleanor swallowed. "There was a man," she said slowly, "standing by the carriage. He spoke very little." "What did he look like?" her father asked. She tried to find words. "Tall," she said. "Dark hair. He spoke like someone who expects to be obeyed." She paused. "His coat was very fine." "The same man," her father said at once. "It must be. The new Duke." He tried to sound almost cheerful, though his fingers gripped the back of the chair. "Well, at least we have seen his face now. We will know him if he comes." Her mother nodded. "If he comes," she echoed, "and if he does, we must be respectful. Eleanor, you must remember your place. Your tongue runs faster than your sense at times. Do not speak out of turn. We cannot afford to offend him." Eleanor's throat tightened so much she could barely breathe. "Mother," she said, the word almost catching, If someone did offend him, what could he do?" Her father gave a short, humorless laugh. "What could he do?" he repeated. "Everything, Ellie. He owns the land beneath our feet. He sets the terms. Men like him do not raise their voices. They sign their names, and families move." A silence fell. Eleanor heard the tick of the small clock on the mantel, the faint creak of the settling roof. Her mother frowned. "Why do you ask such a question?" she said. Then her eyes sharpened. "Eleanor, did you say anything to him? Did you speak out of turn?" Eleanor opened her mouth, closed it. Her heart beat so loudly she could feel it in her throat. "I asked him to move his carriage," she said at last. "The lane was blocked. People could not pass." "Of course you did," her mother said. "You never could leave a thing alone. Did you ask politely?" "I tried," Eleanor replied. "He did not wish to move." "What do you mean he did not wish to move?" her father asked. "He told me to wait," she said. "He said the horses needed rest." "And what did you say?" her mother pressed. "I said—" Eleanor hesitated, feeling heat in her cheeks again. I said that Market would not wait, that my father's stomach would not wait, that you had no patience, her father guessed. That I had too much need for patience, she said. Her mother gave a small groan. Eleanor, there were others behind me, she protested. I was not alone. And what did you do? Her father asked quietly. She gripped the edge of the table. I threw mud at him, she whispered. The words hung in the air like something heavy about to fall. Her mother stared at her. You, what? A small handful, Eleanor said quickly. I did not aim for his face, only his coat. It was foolish, I know. Her father sank slowly into the nearest chair, as if his legs would no longer hold him. So you threw mud, he said slowly, at the Duke of Ashbourne. I did not know who he was, she said. He was only a man in my way. Her mother pressed a hand to her mouth. Oh, Lord have mercy, she breathed. Our daughter has assaulted a duke. It was only mud, Eleanor said, though the words sounded feeble even to her own ears. Her father bent forward, elbows on his knees, hands clasped hard. Did he ask your name? He said. Yes, she replied. I refused to give it. Of course you did, her mother muttered faintly. So he does not know who you are, her father said. Not yet. Perhaps he will not care. Perhaps he will laugh about the wild country girl when he returns to his fine friends. Eleanor looked at him. You do not believe that, she said. He lifted his head and met her eyes. In his gaze she saw fear and something like sorrow. I believe, he said quietly, that men with power do not like to be reminded that they can be touched. And I believe that our lease comes up for renewal before the winter. Her mother's hand dropped from her mouth. That is true, she whispered. I had forgotten. The steward said, Oh, John. Her father stood, walked to the small cupboard near the hearth, and took out a folded, much-handled paper. He laid it on the table, smoothing it with his palms. Our future sits in a clause or two, he said. And now there is a new hand to sign it. A hand you have already stained, Ellie, even if he cannot see the marks. She looked down at the paper, the letters blurred before her. Father, she said, barely managing the word, what if he remembers me? What if he asks who I am? Her father's voice dropped to a hoarse whisper. Then God help us, Eleanor, he said, because the man you flung mud at this morning is not only a duke, but the owner of the very roof over our heads and the fields that keep us alive. The silence that followed her father's words seemed to fill every corner of the cottage. Her mother was the first to move. She stood abruptly and began gathering the peas back into the bowl, hands jerking. We must not despair before anything has even happened, she said. The Duke may never think of it again. Men like that have greater matters in their heads than a splash of mud. Perhaps, her father said, though his voice carried little conviction. Eleanor gripped the back of a chair. I will go to him, she said suddenly. If he comes again, I will apologize. I will tell him I was foolish. You will do nothing until we know what he intends, her father replied sharply. If he does not remember, I will not have you putting your face before him. He will remember, she said quietly. He looked at her, saw that she believed it, and sighed. We can do nothing now, he said. We will work the fields as always. We will pay what we can. We will pray the new Duke has no wish to meddle with small folk. Her mother nodded quickly. Yes, we will do that. And you, Eleanor, you will hold your tongue for once, especially at church on Sunday. If the Duke attends, you will look at your hymn book and nowhere else. Yes, Mother, Eleanor murmured. That night she lay awake listening to her father's faint cough in the next room and the wind against the shutters. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the dark streak across the man's coat. In the morning she rose early, hoping the day would pass without any sign from the manor. She worked in the small kitchen garden, fingers in the earth, planting late peas, tying a falling stalk. The simple work soothed her until she heard wheels on the lane. She straightened. The sound grew louder. Not the quick rattle of a farmer's cart, but the heavier, rolling rhythm she already knew too well. Her mother's head appeared at the cottage door. Eleanor, she whispered, inside, now. Eleanor wiped her hands on her apron. If I run, he will know, she said. He may already know. Her father stepped out behind her mother, face pale. Get your shawl, he said. If he asks for us, we will not have him believe we hide like thieves. I will not hide, Eleanor said. If this is my fault, I will face him. Her mother caught her arm. "Do not say such things to him," she hissed. "Do not say fault. Do not say anything except your grace and yes." The carriage came into view, not the grand one from the day before, but a plainer vehicle, though still finer than any in the village. It stopped before the cottage. A rider accompanied it, and behind them came a man on foot with a leather satchel. The door of the carriage opened. The man from the lane stepped down. He wore a different coat, dark blue this time, and no trace of mud touched it. His presence filled the small yard as completely as the carriage did. Her father stepped forward, cap in hand. "Your Grace," he said, voice carefully respectful. The Duke's eyes flicked to him, then past him, resting on Eleanor. The look lasted only a heartbeat, but it was enough to tell her he remembered everything. "Mr. Whitmore," he said. "Yes, Your Grace," her father replied. "John Whitmore. This is my wife, Margaret, and my daughter, Eleanor." Eleanor felt her mother's fingers pinch her arm, but there was no use pretending now. The Duke inclined his head slightly to Mrs. Whitmore. His gaze returned briefly to Eleanor, cool but steady. "I am visiting several of the tenant farms," he said. "I wish to see for myself how the land lies." He nodded toward the man with the satchel. "This is my steward, Mr. Harrow." The steward, a thin man with a sharp nose and tired eyes, gave them a quick bow. "Your fields were recommended as a fair example, Mr. Whitmore," the Duke added. "May I walk them with you?" "Of course, Your Grace," her father said at once. "We are honored. Eleanor, fetch my stick." She hurried to obey, grateful for something to do. When she returned, her father took the stick and gestured toward the gate. "If you will follow me, Your Grace," he said. The Duke nodded and stepped forward. As he passed Eleanor, he gave no sign that they had ever met before. No hint in his face that she had flung mud at him. Relief mingled with a strange sting in her chest. Her mother tugged at her sleeve. "Go with them," she whispered. "Your father's leg will tire." Eleanor fell into step a little behind the men, her mother trailing further back. The steward walked beside the Duke, holding the satchel, occasionally making a note on a folded paper he carried. Her father spoke of the soil, the drainage, the way the land sloped toward the brook. "We have had fair harvests most years, Your Grace," he said. "We try to keep the fields well, though the last winter was hard." "And the rent?" the Duke asked. "You have kept up with it." "We have done our best," her father replied, his voice steady. "We fell a little behind one season, but we caught up as soon as we could. Your steward will have the figures." Mr. Harrow cleared his throat. "The Whitmore account is not the worst," he said, "but it has been strained at times." The Duke glanced at him, then at Eleanor's father. "Strained how?" he asked. "Slow payments," Harrow said. "Requests for a few weeks' grace now and then. Nothing unusual, given the weather of recent years." The Duke nodded. "And you, Mrs. Whitmore," he called back toward Eleanor's mother. "Do you find the cottage sufficient?" Her mother startled, then answered with a nervous little laugh. "We are but simple folk, Your Grace," she said. "We are grateful to have a roof that keeps the rain mostly out." "Mostly?" he repeated. "There is a leak over the corner where we store the onions," she said quickly. "Nothing serious. John stuffs it with rags. It does not trouble us." "Make a note," the Duke told Harrow. "The roof should be seen to before the winter." "Yes, Your Grace," Harrow said. Her father blinked. "We do not expect repairs at your expense, Your Grace," he said. "We are used to managing." "A sound roof protects my property as well as your onions," the Duke replied. "There is sense in that." They reached the far field where young wheat was pushing up in neat rows. The Duke stood for a moment, looking across it. "You work this land with your daughter?" he asked. "Yes, Your Grace," her father said. "Eleanor is a hard worker. She knows every furrow." The Duke turned his head slightly, finally letting his gaze rest on her, with more than a passing glance. "And is your daughter always so industrious in defending the lane to market?" he asked. Her mother made a strangled sound. Her father went rigid. Eleanor felt heat surge into her face. "Your Grace," her father began, voice shaking. "If she spoke out of turn, she did more than speak," the Duke said calmly. "She decorated my coat." Her mother's hand flew to her mouth. "I beg your pardon, Your Grace," she said quickly. "She did not know who you were. She would never have dared." "That is the point, Mother," Eleanor heard herself say. "I should not have done it, whether he was a duke or a stable boy." All eyes turned to her. Her heart hammered, but the words were out now. "I lost my temper," she went on, forcing herself to stand straight. "I was wrong. I ask your pardon, your grace." The Duke studied her. "You do not seem afraid," he said. "Oh, she is afraid," her mother cut in. "She is terrified. She lay awake half the night." "Mother," Eleanor whispered. The Duke's mouth twitched almost like the beginning of a smile. "People rarely throw mud at me in fear," he said. "They do it in anger or in jest. Which was it, Miss Whitmore?" "Anger," she said. "Not at you in particular. At everything. At being told to wait?" he asked. "Yes, your grace," she said. "At that, and at not knowing whether the bread I was going to fetch would be paid for, and at thinking of my father's health, and other things." Her father murmured her name in warning, but the Duke lifted a hand, stopping him. "Do you think throwing mud changed any of those things?" he asked quietly. "No," she said, "but it felt for a moment as if I could do something in a world where I can do very little." He was silent a moment, eyes on her. "I appreciate honesty," he said finally, "although I prefer it without mud." Her mother let out a breath that sounded like a sob and a laugh tangled together. "Your Grace is kind to speak so," she said. "We will see that she remembers her place." The Duke glanced at her. "I do not wish to break her spirit, Mrs. Whitmore," he said. "Spirits like hers can be useful." "Useful," Eleanor repeated before she could stop herself. He looked back at her. "Tenants who care strongly about their lives are more likely to work hard," he said. "Indifference is a worse enemy to a landlord than temper, Miss Whitmore." "I think I have never heard a duke speak of enemies and tenants in the same breath," she said. "Then you have not known many dukes," he replied. "No, your grace," she said. "I confess you are my first." Her father groaned softly. The duke's gaze shifted to the hedgerow. "These boundaries are old," he said to Harrow. "We will need a full survey. I will not make decisions blind." "Yes, your grace," Harrow said. "I have the maps from your late uncle's time. There are also the leases. The Whitmores comes up for renewal this year." Eleanor flinched at the word. The Duke nodded. "I am aware," he said. "Some of the terms were adjusted during the bad harvest," Harrow added. "Your uncle's hand is on that paper, but there is room still to—" "That will be all for now, Mr. Harrow," the Duke said, a hint of warning in his tone. Harrow fell silent. Eleanor caught the glance her father sent the steward. She saw the tightness in her mother's jaw. "What does that mean?" she asked before thinking. "Adjusted how?" "Eleanor," her mother whispered. The Duke looked at her. "It means," he said, "that your father and I will discuss leases and terms in due course. It is not a matter for this morning, not a matter for a tenant's daughter," she said, unable to keep the edge out of her voice. "Not yet," he replied. Her father stepped forward, placing a hand on her shoulder. "We are grateful for your Grace's visit," he said quickly. "We would not wish to keep you from other business." "You are not keeping me," the Duke said. "I chose to come. I prefer to see, not only to read numbers on a page." He took one last look over the field, then back at Eleanor's father. "I will speak with you again before the autumn," he said. "Until then, continue as you have. Mr. Harrow will inform you of any changes." "Yes, your Grace," her father said. The Duke turned to Eleanor once more. "And you, Miss Whitmore," he said. "If you feel the urge to throw anything again, may I suggest stones at crows instead of mud at strangers?" She almost smiled. "I will try to remember that, your Grace," she said. "I should like you to do more than try," he said. "The next man you insult may not find it as easy to forgive." "Have you forgiven?" she asked quietly. A faint light appeared in his eyes. "I have not yet decided," he said. "We shall see how the harvest goes." With that, he inclined his head and walked back toward the cottage. Harrow hurried after him. Her parents followed at a distance, leaving Eleanor standing alone in the field. When she returned to the yard, the carriage was being readied. The Duke was speaking with Harrow in low tones. Her father hovered nearby, hat crushed between his fingers. "Your Grace," her father was saying, "about the lease." "We will speak of it at the proper time, Mr. Whitmore," the Duke said. "I do not tear up old agreements lightly, nor do I keep them blindly." "Yes, your Grace," her father murmured. The Duke climbed into the carriage. For a brief second, his eyes met Eleanor's. Then the door closed, the coachman flicked the reins, and the carriage rolled away. Her mother sank onto the doorstep as soon as it was gone. "I feel as if I have been holding my breath for an hour," she said. Her father stared down the lane. "He knows," he said quietly, "about the lease." about everything. He knows exactly how much power he holds. And what did you expect, John? Her mother asked. He is a duke. Power is bred into men like that. Yes, he said, but I had hoped, just a little, that he might not use it. Eleanor watched the carriage grow smaller. He said he does not act blindly, she said. Perhaps that means he will be fair. Fair and merciful are not always the same, her father replied. Do not put your hope in one man's temper, Ellie. Men die, titles pass, paper remains. Later that afternoon, Thomas came up the path, wiping his hands on a cloth. I heard the Duke came here, he said without preamble. Are you still in possession of your head? For now, Eleanor said. What did he say? Thomas asked. That he prefers stones at crows, she replied. Thomas blinked. I beg your pardon. Never mind, she said. He walked the fields. He spoke of the roof. He hinted at the lease. He did not shout. That is something, Thomas muttered. Did he glare at you? Not quite, she said. He looked at me as if I were a puzzle he had not yet decided to enjoy or throw away. Thomas's jaw tightened. I do not like the sound of that, he said. I would prefer him to forget you entirely. So would I, she said. He reached for her hand, then let it drop, remembering her parents were watching from the window. We will speak with the vicar, he said. If there is trouble with the lease, perhaps he can appeal to the Duke. He has friends among the gentry. Her father opened the door. We will not go begging yet, he said. We will see what comes of Sunday. Sunday? Thomas repeated. The Duke is expected at church, her father said. If he means to set himself over this village, he will wish to be seen doing it. Church that Sunday felt more crowded than usual. People arrived earlier, their best clothes brushed, their children scrubbed pink. Eleanor walked between her parents, feeling every eye turn as they entered. There she is, someone whispered behind her. That's the one who... Hush, another voice said. He is here. The murmur rippled through the pews. Eleanor followed the small wave of movement and saw him. He entered with an ease that made the narrow aisle seem wider. The vicar hurried to greet him, bowing slightly, hands fluttering. The Duke gave a courteous nod and took a seat near the front, where the old Duke had once sat on his rare visits. Mr. Harrow stood discreetly at the back. Eleanor slid into a pew several rows behind, head lowered. Thomas joined them, wedged awkwardly at the end of the bench. Mrs. Green, the vicar's wife, turned in her seat and gave Eleanor a long, assessing look. Her gaze flicked from Eleanor's plain dress to the Duke, then back again, as if she had stumbled upon a story and meant to wring every drop from it. The service began. Hymns were sung, prayers were said. The vicar delivered a sermon on obedience and order that sounded a little too tailored to the occasion. Eleanor kept her eyes fixed on the words in the book, though she could not have repeated a single line. When the final hymn ended and the blessing was given, the congregation began to spill out into the churchyard. People lingered, eager to be seen by the Duke, to exchange a few polite words with him. Remember, her mother whispered, you will say nothing unless spoken to. Eleanor nodded. Mrs. Green appeared at her elbow like a bird drawn to crumbs. Miss Whitmore, she said, voice syrupy and sharp at once. What a charming gown, so modest, so suitable. Thank you, Mrs. Green, Eleanor said. I understand you have had a memorable week, Mrs. Green went on. Such excitement for a quiet village, a new Duke, and all that comes with him. Yes, ma'am, Eleanor murmured. Mrs. Green leaned closer. One must be careful, you know, she said. Young ladies are so easily noticed. A word spoken hastily, a gesture made in temper, and suddenly everyone is talking. Reputations are delicate things. I am aware, Eleanor said. Mrs. Green's smile grew thinner. I am sure you are, she said. I hope you will remember it now more than ever. Men of rank rarely seek respectable wives among those who attract gossip. Eleanor's cheeks burned. I am engaged to Thomas Hale, she said. I do not seek any other man's notice. Mrs. Green shrugged. Men's eyes do as they please, she said. It is a woman's duty to ensure they find nothing improper to rest upon. She cast a quick glance toward the Duke, particularly when such eyes have power behind them. She has said enough, Mrs. Green, Thomas said suddenly, stepping forward. Eleanor's reputation is perfectly sound and will remain so. Mrs. Green raised her brows. Oh, Mr. Hale, she said, I only speak for her good. Engagements are one thing. Marriage is another. Until vows are said, nothing is certain. She smiled again, too sweet. Do enjoy the day. She floated away toward another cluster of villagers. Thomas swore under his breath, then caught himself. Apologies, he muttered. I should not say such words in the churchyard. Eleanor almost laughed. It is the only honest language I have heard today, she said. Her father joined them, face stiff. Do not answer Mrs. Green, he said. She feeds on replies. Near the gate, the Duke stood speaking with the vicar and a few of the wealthier farmers. His posture was relaxed, his manner courteous, his voice low. People approached him with a mixture of eagerness and awe. At one point his gaze lifted and swept the churchyard. It passed over Eleanor briefly, no longer than over anyone else. But Mrs. Green saw it and narrowed her eyes in satisfaction, as if she had just been given reason to double her gossip. Do not look back at him, her mother hissed. I am not, Eleanor replied. I am looking at Mrs. Green, and that is quite enough. As they moved toward the gate, the estate steward, Mr. Harrow, detached himself from the wall and stepped toward her father. Mr. Whitmore, he said. Her father stiffened. Yes, sir, he said. I am to inform you, Harrow said, that your lease is among those under review. The Duke wishes to examine all such agreements before winter. Eleanor felt the words like a stone dropped into a well. Under review? Her father repeated. What does that mean for us? It means, Harrow said, that nothing is decided yet. Terms may be altered, some improved, some less so. Less so, her mother echoed, voice tight. The estate must be set in order, Harrow said briskly. We cannot maintain unprofitable arrangements out of sentiment. We have always worked hard, her father protested. We are not asking for charity, only for time. I am not the one you must persuade, Harrow replied. I am merely the messenger. He glanced briefly at Eleanor as if noting her presence, then turned away. The Whitmores stood together in a small knot, the sounds of conversation swirling around them. This is because of yesterday, her mother whispered. It must be. We do not know that, her father said, but we cannot pretend it helps. Near the gate, Harrow joined the Duke. Eleanor saw the steward lean in, speaking low. The Duke's face remained unreadable as he listened. Thomas touched her elbow. Wait here, he murmured. I will go greet him. It may help if he sees I intend to take you as my wife, that you will not always be a tenant's daughter. Thomas, no, she said quickly. Do not draw attention. But he was already moving away, shoulders squared, hat in hand. He approached the Duke with a respectful bow. They exchanged a few words. The Duke nodded once, glanced briefly back in Eleanor's direction, then returned his attention to Harrow. Eleanor watched Harrow lift the leather folder he carried. The Whitmore lease, he seemed to say, though she could not hear the words. Your uncle added a special clause, Your Grace. You could reclaim the land at any time with a single notice if you wish. No compensation owed. The steward quietly reminded Henry that, by law, he could remove the Whitmores from their land with a single formal notice. And Eleanor, watching from a distance, saw the men speaking and felt that her fate was being decided without her. For several days after the service, nothing happened. No messenger came riding up the lane. No second carriage appeared at the cottage door. The Whitmores worked their fields, mended fences, kept their heads down. Yet the sense of something pending hung over them like low cloud. Eleanor rose each morning with the same thought. Will it be today? Sometimes she half hoped it would be. The waiting gnawed at her more than any single blow could have done. On the fourth day, Thomas arrived in the yard with his sleeves rolled and determination in his eyes. We cannot live like hunted rabbits, he said. If the Duke means to cut your lease, let him say so. In the meantime, we will not let the wheat rot in the ground. I came to help with the lower field. Her father clapped him on the shoulder. You are a good lad, he said. We will gladly take your hands. Eleanor watched them for a moment, both men striding toward the gate, then seized the bundle of tools and hurried after them. They worked side by side, the rhythm of it almost soothing. Thomas took the heavier tasks. Her father paced himself. Eleanor did everything in between. When they rested, they drank water from the same jug and shared a heel of bread and a bit of cheese. You see, Thomas said at one point, leaning on his spade, whatever the Duke decides, we can endure it. Perhaps we will shift to my land. Perhaps we will build a new cottage. People do not die of moving. Her father gave him a searching look. Do not speak lightly of leaving, he said. Roots are not pulled up without pain. "I know," Thomas said, "but I would rather speak of plans than sit in fear. Fear changes nothing." Eleanor wiped her brow with the back of her hand. "What if he lets us stay?" she asked. "What if he changes nothing?" "Then we will go on as we have," her father said. "And you, my girl, will marry Thomas in the autumn and forget you ever threw mud at anyone." "Do you think I will forget that?" she said. "I hope so," he replied. "I would rather your memories of this year be of wedding cakes than of leases." She smiled faintly. They did not see the rider until he was almost at the gate. A stable lad from the manor dismounted, cheeks flushed, and handed Eleanor's father a folded note. "From Mr. Harrow, sir," he said. "He asks that you come to the manor tomorrow afternoon. The Duke wishes to speak with several tenants regarding boundaries and accounts." "Several tenants?" Eleanor's father repeated. "Yes, sir," the boy said. "You are not alone." Her father broke the seal with stiff fingers, scanned the short message, and sighed. "Very well," he said. "Tell Mr. Harrow I will come." When the boy had gone, Thomas frowned. "Do you want me with you?" he asked. "I can stand by in the yard." "This is tenant and landlord's business," her father said. "I must go alone." Eleanor clasped her hands tightly. "You will take what papers we have," she said. "You will remind him we have never defaulted." "I will take everything," he said, "including my best coat. Duke's like a man to look as if he can pay even when he cannot." The next day felt twice as long as any other. Her father shaved, changed into his wedding day coat, and went out with a careful smile for his wife and daughter. "I will not sign anything without reading it," he said at the door. "Do not fret before you must." "Do not be too proud either," her mother replied. "If you can wring a little mercy from him, do it." "I am not too proud to ask," he said, "only too proud to grovel." When he had gone, Eleanor wandered from room to yard and back again, unable to settle. Her mother tried to sew, pricking her finger so often she finally threw the work aside. "Make some tea," she said. "It will give us something to do." By the time her father returned, the light was lowering. His shoulders drooped more than usual. Eleanor met him at the gate. "Well?" she asked. "He had me wait in a small room for nearly an hour," her father said, "while Mr. Harrow shuffled papers. Then we were called into the study. The Duke sat at a great desk with maps spread out and more papers than I could count." "What did he say?" her mother asked, coming to the door. "He asked questions," her father said. "How many acres we work, how many hands, what we yield. He knew some of it already. Harrow had told him. He listened. That is something." "But the lease?" Eleanor pressed. "Did he speak of the clause?" Her father's mouth tightened. "He knows of it," he said. "Harrow made sure of that." "And?" her mother demanded. "And nothing," he said. "He said the clause exists. He said it was agreed to in hard times. He said he will not decide today." "Not decide?" Eleanor repeated. "He wants to see the harvest first," her father replied. "He wants to know which land is profitable and which is not. He spoke of rational management and modern expectations till my head rang." "That sounds like the language of men who move other men like stones on a board," her mother said weakly. Eleanor felt something cold settle in her chest. "So we must wait," she said. "Yes," her father said. "We must work as if everything depends on it." Because perhaps it does. That night, long after her parents had gone to bed, Eleanor sat by the small window, chin on her knees, watching a faint light up on the hill where the manor stood. Somewhere behind those walls, the Duke sat with her father's future on his desk. She remembered the steadiness of his eyes, the way he had looked at her in the field. "Do you think I do not know what power I hold?" He had not said, but his manner had. She did not know whether to resent him or pity him. At Ashbourne Manor, Henry Blackwell sat in his study with a headache forming. Harrow stood before the desk, holding a list. "If your Grace enforces the consolidation clauses," the steward was saying, "the estate's income will increase by at least 15% within 3 years. Some tenants will have to leave, of course, but others will benefit from larger, more efficient holdings." "Efficient," Henry repeated softly. "A pleasant word." Harrow frowned slightly. "I speak in terms of the estate's health, Your Grace," he said. "Your uncle invested heavily in certain projects. Loans must be repaid. Sentiment will not satisfy creditors." Henry leaned back, fingers tapping the arm of his chair. "What do you know of the Whitmores?" he asked. "Beyond what is on your list." Harrow consulted a separate sheet. "John Whitmore, 54. he recited. Married, 1 daughter. Worked the same plot for 20 years. Reliable enough. Occasionally late, but has always caught up. The special clause was added after the bad harvest 12 years ago, when your uncle remitted part of the rent. And you advised that clause? Henry asked. It was your uncle's suggestion, Harrow said quickly. He disliked remissions. He preferred security. It is a common enough condition, though rarely enforced. Rarely, Henry said. Not never. He pulled a worn lease from the pile and ran his thumb along the signature. So, he said slowly, by the stroke of my pen, I may wipe out 20 years of work. You may reclaim your property. Yes, Harrow said. The land would be merged with the adjoining farm, which has offered favorable terms. Henry thought of Eleanor's father, standing in the study doorway with his hat crushed between his hands, trying to stand straight despite a leg that pained him. He thought of Eleanor in the field, mud on her apron, eyes steady as she apologized. That land is not mine in the same way a coat or a horse is mine, he said. Legally it is, Harrow replied. Legally, Henry echoed. Tell me, Mr. Harrow, have you ever spent a winter wondering whether you would have the same roof over your head in spring? Harrow shifted. It is not my place to— No, Henry said. It is not. That is why you are steward, and I am duke. He pushed the lease back into the pile. I will not sign away any farm today, he said. We will review them after the harvest. In the meantime, see that necessary repairs are made. No tenant will be turned out this year for a broken roof. That will cost money, Your Grace, Harrow said. Yes, Henry replied. Strange is it not that roofs are not repaired by good intentions? Harrow hesitated. And the Whitmore's clause? He asked. Remains, Henry said. For now, I will not pretend it does not exist, but I will not use it as a whip over their heads either. No notices, no threats. Do you understand? Harrow inclined his head, though his mouth was tight. As you wish, Your Grace, he said. After the steward had gone, Henry sat alone for a long time, staring at the fire. He had not asked for this title. He had inherited it, along with its debts, its expectations, its invisible army of eyes, watching his every choice. He could play the ruthless landlord and be called efficient. He could play the indulgent one and be called weak. He thought of the mud on his coat, the shock, the spark in Eleanor's face. You do not seem afraid, he had said to her. She had been, but she had not bowed. For reasons he could not entirely name, he found himself unwilling to be the man who pushed her family from their land. Days slipped into weeks. The Duke's presence in Rosebery became a regular part of village talk. He rode through the lanes now and then, sometimes alone, sometimes with Harrow. He stopped at fields, spoke with farmers, listened more than he spoke. More than once, his path led him past the Whitmore land. One morning, Eleanor was tying up young bean plants when she heard hoofbeats. She turned and saw him approaching along the hedge. She straightened, brushing dirt from her hands, heart suddenly too fast. Your Grace, she said. Miss Whitmore, he replied, drawing his horse to a walk. You're at war with the weeds, I see. They started it, she said. I merely defend myself. A corner of his mouth lifted. An admirable strategy, he said. How do the crops fare? Well enough, she answered. The weather has been kind. And the roof, he asked. Has the leak been mended? Yes, Your Grace, she said. A man from the estate came last week. We are grateful. You pay rent, he said. Roofs ought to be included in such extravagance. She almost laughed. Many landlords would disagree, she said. Many landlords are fools, he replied. She looked at him, surprised. You speak strangely for a duke, she said. How many dukes have you known, Miss Whitmore? He asked. As I said before, she replied, only you. Then you have no basis for comparison, he said. Perhaps not, she said, but I have known many men, and few speak as you do. Is that reproach or compliment? He asked. I am not yet decided, she said. He regarded her for a moment, something thoughtful in his expression. You have a sharp tongue, he said. It is both a danger and a shield. I try not to stab anyone with it, she said. Not twice, at least. An excellent rule, he replied. They stood like that for a few heartbeats, the air between them not quite easy, not quite strained. Eleanor became suddenly aware of how close he was, the horse's warm breath, the faint scent of leather and something clean beneath it. She stepped back, more from alarm at herself than at him. "Will you be inspecting all your tenants today, Your Grace?" she asked, forcing a practical tone. "Not all," he said. "Only those whose land lies along this road. Mr. Harrow grows anxious if I spend too much time in mere conversation." "Stewards do not enjoy conversation?" she asked. "Stewards enjoy ledgers," he said. "If you begin to speak of feelings, they grow pale." Her lips quirked. "Then I shall not trouble Mr. Harrow," she said. "I doubt you could," he replied, surprising her. "You trouble people who are not easily troubled." She did not know what to say to that. He inclined his head. "Good day, Miss Whitmore," he said. "May your weeds surrender." "Good day, Your Grace," she answered. As he rode away, she exhaled slowly. Her hands felt unsteady when she bent back to the bean plants. Later that day in the village, she heard the first whispers. "The Duke was speaking with Eleanor Whitmore in her field," one woman told another. "Just the two of them, no one else." "Her father was at the upper pasture," the other said. "I saw him myself." "Well," the first replied, lowering her voice, "her father is not blind. If he has any sense, he will keep his daughter out of a gentleman's path." "Why?" a third woman asked. "Do you think His Grace means harm?" "Men of rank do not mean harm," the first answered. "They mean pleasure. Harm comes later, when people begin to talk." By the time Eleanor reached the baker's stall, Mrs. Green already had the story half formed. "Such neighbourly interest," the vicar's wife said with a thin smile. "The Duke cares for his tenants' beans, it seems." "He cares for his land," Eleanor said evenly. "Nothing more." "Oh, my dear," Mrs. Green murmured. "Land, daughters. To a man in his position, it is all part of the same estate." Eleanor's jaw clenched. "My father is always in the fields with me," she said. "Today he was only a few minutes away." "I am sure he is vigilant," Mrs. Green replied. "Yet reputations do not measure minutes. They measure appearances. I advise caution." "Thank you," Eleanor said. "I will consider it." She walked away before Mrs. Green could say more. That evening Thomas arrived with a clouded face. "I heard things in the village," he said bluntly. "That the Duke visits your fields, that he speaks with you alone." "He does not seek me," Eleanor said. "He rides the land. Sometimes our paths cross." "And when they do?" Thomas pressed. "We speak," she said, "of crops, of roofs, of his steward's dislike of feelings. Nothing more." Thomas's hands flexed at his sides. "Eleanor," he said, "you know how it looks. People talk, they watch, a nobleman and a tenant's daughter." "A tenant's daughter who is engaged," she said, her voice a little too sharp. "Have they forgotten that?" "Some choose to remember it less than others," he said. "They enjoy a scandal where there is none." She hesitated. "Do you think there is a scandal?" she asked quietly. He looked at her. His face softened, but his eyes were still troubled. "I think you are honest," he said. "I think you mean no wrong. I do not know what the Duke thinks." "He has been proper," she said. "He has not overstepped." "No," Thomas said, "but he keeps coming." "That is his land," she said. "He has a right." "He has a right to the fields," Thomas replied. "Not to your peace of mind." She lowered her gaze. "What would you have me do?" she asked. "Refuse to speak to him when he addresses me. Run into the house at the sight of his horse. That would set tongues wagging even faster." "I know," he said. "I do not ask you to be rude, only be careful. Do not allow him to think you are flattered." "I am not," she said quickly. Then more slowly, "I am curious. He is not what I expected." Thomas flinched just slightly. "I cannot compete with a duke," he said. "Not in curiosity. I only offer what I have. My name, my land, my work. You offer steadiness," she said. "That is worth more than curiosity." "Is it?" he asked. "To you?" She opened her mouth, found no ready answer. He looked away. "Our wedding is set for harvest time," he said. "My mother bakes as if the date were carved in stone. If you wish it changed, you must say so before she buys more sugar." "Changed," she repeated. "Do you wish it changed?" "I wish it certain," he said simply. "I wish to know you choose me, not as escape, but as choice." She stepped closer. "I gave you my word," she said. "I meant it." He nodded, but the worry in his eyes did not entirely clear. Summer grew heavy, then began to slip toward autumn. The wheat ripened. The air filled with the smell of cut grass and distant smoke. Men worked from dawn to dusk, scythes flashing, carts creaking under the weight of sheaves. The Duke was everywhere. He rode from one end of the estate to the other, observing harvests, checking storehouses, speaking with bailiffs and tenants. Sometimes he supervised the stacking of hay as if he had been born to it. Sometimes he stopped to watch children race one another along the hedgerows. Everywhere he went, people watched him in return. "Has he decided yet?" they asked one another. "Will he raise the rent? Will he send anyone away?" Harrow walked at his elbow, a bundle of papers never far from his hand. The steward's gaze was sharp, calculating, always counting. One afternoon, Henry stood at the edge of the Whitmore field, watching men and women gather in the last of the wheat. Eleanor worked among them, skirt tucked up, hair damp at the temples. She laughed at something one of the younger boys said, her face bright for a moment in the slanting light. Henry felt a strange tug in his chest. It had nothing to do with yields or profits. He tore his gaze away, annoyed at himself, and turned to Harrow. "What is the sum for this section?" he asked. Harrow consulted his notes. "Modest," he said. "Not the richest soil, but adequate." "And with improvements?" Henry asked. "With fresh drainage and more hands we could increase it," Harrow said. "Or we could merge it with the adjoining farm, which has offered to take it on. Larger fields, fewer hedges, greater efficiency." "How many people would lose their home if we merged it?" Henry asked. Harrow hesitated. "3 in the Whitmore cottage," he said. "Perhaps 2 labourers as well. They could find work elsewhere. Or emigrate. Many do." Henry's jaw tightened. "We are not exporting tenants like barrels of grain," he said. Harrow pursed his lips. "I only mention possibilities," he said. "Your Grace must choose." "Yes," Henry said. "I must." He watched Eleanor straighten, shading her eyes with one hand. She had seen him there. She gave a small nod, nothing more. Her father glanced toward Henry as well, then back to his work. "Postpone any consolidation here," Henry said abruptly. "We will decide after I have reviewed the old agreements once more." "As you wish," Harrow said, voice carefully neutral. That evening Henry sat again with the leases. He read the Whitmore clause 3 times, considering every line. He could strike it out. He had that right. He could say his uncle had been unjust. He could choose a different path. He could also be accused of weakness by those who watched his accounts, by family members who relied on the estate's income, by London acquaintances who believed mercy a dangerous indulgence. He closed his eyes briefly. "Do you seek their approval?" he asked himself softly. "Or your own?" In the end, he did not sign anything that night. As the harvest drew to its end, talk in the village shifted to the upcoming wedding. "It will be a fine match," people said. "The Whitmores will be safer with Thomas Hale as son-in-law. 2 small holdings together are stronger." Mrs. Hale bustled through the lanes, measuring, planning, counting eggs. She spoke of pies as generals spoke of battle plans. "We will have a table in the yard," she told anyone who would listen. "There will be music. My Thomas will have a proper wedding if I have to bake till my hands fall off." Eleanor let herself be swept along, helping to sew, to knead, to arrange. At night, when she lay down, her thoughts wandered. She imagined standing beside Thomas in the church, speaking the words everyone expected. She imagined returning to a new house, a new table, a new name. She imagined, against her will, seeing the Duke among the guests, his face unreadable, his eyes giving nothing away. One afternoon, as she helped Mrs. Hale roll pastry, the older woman looked at her keenly. "You are quiet, girl," she said. "Do you dread being my daughter so much?" Eleanor shook her head quickly. "No," she said. "I do not dread it. I only think." "Thinking spoils pastry," Mrs. Hale said briskly. "Too heavy a hand and it will be tough. Too light and it falls apart. Same with marriage, but my Thomas is a good lad. He will not expect you to be someone else." "I know," Eleanor said. "He has always been kind." "Then put the Duke out of your mind," Mrs. Hale said bluntly. "Men like that pass through our lives the way storms do. They make a mess, they frighten people, then they move on. We are the ones who must put things back in order." Eleanor looked down at the dough. "I wish it were so simple," she murmured. The week before the wedding, a messenger from the manor arrived again. He pinned a folded notice to the door of the inn, then another to the church gate, then rode on to the next village. People gathered quickly, curiosity burning stronger than their errands. Eleanor came upon the knot of villagers outside the inn on her way back from the mill. She saw the paper, saw the cluster of heads bent toward it. heard the first uncertain exclamations. "What is it?" someone asked. "A meeting," the innkeeper said, squinting at the words. "He calls it an announcement." "Whose?" another voice demanded. "The Duke's," the innkeeper answered. "Listen." He cleared his throat and read slowly, stumbling over the more elaborate phrases. "To the tenants and inhabitants of the Ashbourne estate," he began. "On the morning of Michaelmas at the hour of 11, I, Henry Blackwell, Duke of Ashbourne, will assemble at the village green to speak on the matter of the estate leases, the future of certain tenancies, and the terms by which the land shall be held hereafter." The murmur rose and swelled. "Michaelmas," someone cried. "That is next week." "At 11, another said. "But that is the hour of the Hale Whitmore wedding." "Go on," urged a third. The innkeeper read the final lines. "All tenants whose leases are due for renewal within the year are particularly requested to be present, that they may hear my determinations and understand their standing. Signed, Henry Blackwell, Duke of Ashbourne." Eleanor did not hear the last words clearly. Her ears rang. Michaelmas, 11, the wedding. She pushed closer, eyes fixed on the neat black letters. The notice was brief, but its meaning was not. He would speak of leases. He would speak of futures. He would speak of her family's right to their home, and he would do it on the very morning she was meant to stand before the altar and promise herself to Thomas. Heart-pounding, Eleanor stood before the posted notice, reading that the Duke would clarify the future of several tenant farms on the very day she was to be married. All week, the notice at the inn door seemed to watch the village. People paused before it on their way to market, to the smithy, to the pump. Some read it again and again as if the words might change. Others stood back and talked in low, anxious voices. "Why on Michaelmas?" one man muttered. "Why on the very day of the wedding?" "Because the Duke is a man, not a calendar," someone else replied. "He thinks of his accounts, not our cakes." The vicar tried to sound hopeful. "Perhaps he means to bring good news," he said. "A feast day, a wedding, an announcement of mercy. It would be fitting." Mrs. Green sniffed. "Or he means to show us that our little village affairs do not stand in the way of his business," she said. "Either way, everyone will be watching." Poor Eleanor. Imagine choosing her vows under the weight of all that. Eleanor did not need Mrs. Green to tell her that. She felt it in every breath. At home, the notice lay folded on the table, copied out by her father's careful hand. He read it each night, as if some hidden promise or threat might appear. Her mother fretted over both the wedding and the meeting. "How are we to be in two places at once?" she asked. "The church and the green, the Duke and the vicar, our future in two different mouths." "We will go to the green first," her father said. "We cannot ignore the man who holds our lease." "And keep the vicar waiting," her mother protested. "What will people think?" "They will think what they please," he said. "They always do." Thomas tried to be steady. He came by every evening to help with some small task, to discuss arrangements, to reassure where he could. "We will stand together," he said to Eleanor as they walked along the lane 3 days before the wedding. "At the green, at the church, wherever we must. Whatever the Duke says, we will meet it as one." "Even if he takes the farm?" she asked. "We will find another way," he said. "We will not starve. I have hands. You have courage. Between us, we will manage." "How you speak as if courage can be eaten," she said, forcing a smile. "It cannot," he replied, "but it can be married." She looked up at him. "Thomas," she said slowly, "if the Duke announces something strange, if people speak even more than they do now, will you regret tying yourself to me?" He stopped in the path. "I asked you to marry me knowing you had thrown mud at a duke," he said. "You cannot surprise me more than that." She gave a small laugh. "You do not know me as well as you think," she said. "Then marry me," he said softly, "and let me learn." The morning of Michaelmas dawned clear and cool. The cottage was full of movement. Her mother fussed over her hair, over the simple cream dress, over the ribbon that would serve as her veil. "You are pale," she said. "You will frighten the vicar into thinking you are about to faint." "Smile, Eleanor." Eleanor tried. The expression felt fragile. Her father stood in the doorway, fiddling with his collar. "We should go," he said. "Harrow's notice said 11. The Duke will not appreciate tardiness." "I do not care for what he appreciates," her mother muttered. "But I care for what he can do to us. So we will go." Thomas arrived just then in his best coat. hair brushed flat, jaw tight. "Are you ready?" he asked gently. "I am dressed," she said. "Ready is another matter." "We will take each step as it comes," he replied. First, the green. Then the church. They joined the stream of people moving toward the village. Some wore their work clothes, others their Sunday best. All had the same pinched, expectant look. The green was already crowded when they arrived. At one end, a small raised platform had been set up. The Duke stood upon it, coat dark against the pale sky, Harrow at his side. A few other estate men stood nearby, holding folders and ledgers. The murmur of voices died as Henry stepped forward. "Thank you for coming," he said, his voice clear enough to reach the edges of the crowd. "I know you have work to do and lives to attend. I will not speak longer than I must." Eleanor stood between her parents, Thomas just behind her shoulder. She could feel the tension in her father's body like a drawn bowstring. "You all know that I came into this title after my uncle's death," Henry continued. "I inherited not only the manor and its lands, but also his accounts, his debts, his agreements with you." He lifted a sheaf of papers. "In the past months, I have read every lease, every clause, every adjustment made in times of hardship. Some of what I found is fair, some of it is not." The crowd shifted. "What does he mean?" someone whispered. Henry held up one particular page. "Years ago," he said, "during a bad harvest, my uncle granted temporary relief to certain tenants. In exchange, he demanded new conditions that placed all the risk on their shoulders. Clauses that allowed the estate to reclaim land without compensation after years of work. Clauses that turned one bad season into a threat that never ended." Harrow's jaw tightened, but he said nothing. Eleanor felt the blood drain from her face. She knew exactly which clause he meant. "I will speak plainly," Henry said. "I consider such terms unjust. They may be legal, they may be common, but they are not, in my judgment, right." A low murmur ran through the crowd. He went on, "I do not believe that a man who has worked a field for 20 years should live in fear that a line of ink will strip him of it overnight. I do not believe that tenants who have done their best should be punished forever for accepting help in a desperate year." Her father's hand moved to his chest as if he needed to steady it. "Therefore," Henry said, "I have taken a decision." He looked out at them, his gaze steady. "Every clause of that sort in every lease on the Ashbourne estate is from this day void," he said. "Struck out, cancelled. No tenant will be removed from their land by those terms. Not now, not in future. If a tenancy ends, it will be through clear failure to pay the agreed rent over time, not because of a trap laid in a bad year." There was a beat of stunned silence. Then the sound broke over the green like a wave. Relief, laughter, a few choked sobs. Men clapped each other's backs. Women pressed their hands to their mouths. Someone exclaimed, "Thank God," loud enough that several others echoed it. Beside Eleanor, her mother began to cry quietly. Her father's shoulders trembled. He closed his eyes for a moment. "The Whitmore lease is among those affected," Henry said, and his voice cut through the noise. "As are the leases of the Tanners, the Fords, and several others." He nodded toward different faces in the crowd. "Your land is secure so long as you meet reasonable terms. You will not wake to find yourselves strangers on the fields you have tended." Eleanor's vision blurred. She blinked hard. Henry lifted a hand and the murmur subsided. "This does not mean there will be no changes," he said. "Rents will be reviewed. Some may rise, some may fall according to the land's yield. I will not pretend I do this only out of generosity. The estate must be kept sound, but it will be done openly with explanations given. No more hidden clauses, no more surprises." He glanced at Harrow. "Mr. Harrow will meet with you in the coming weeks," he said. "You will see your leases with your own eyes. If you do not understand a term, you may ask." "I expect my steward to answer." Harrow bowed his head, though his mouth was tight. A man near the front called out, "What of repairs, Your Grace? Cottages, fences?" Henry nodded toward him. "Where the estate is responsible, we will meet that duty," he said. "Where tenants are responsible, we will give time where it is needed, not threats. We rise together or fall together. There is no sense in squeezing rent from a house that cannot stand." The same man swallowed visibly. "Thank you, Your Grace," he said. Henry's gaze moved over the crowd and, for a heartbeat, settled on Eleanor. It was only an instant, but it was enough. He finished more briefly. "I cannot promise perfection," he said. "I can only promise that I will not hide behind ink or habit when dealing with your lives. We will speak as men and women who share the same ground, even if we stand on different parts of it." Then he stepped back. The noise rushed up again. People turned to one another, joy breaking through fear. Some even laughed through tears. Eleanor's mother caught her husband's arm. "Did you hear?" she whispered. "Our land, John. Our land." "I heard," he said, voice thick. "I never thought to hear such words from a duke's mouth." Thomas touched Eleanor's elbow. "This is good," he said. "Whatever else happens today, this is good." "Yes," she said, though the word felt far away. Her eyes were still on the platform. Henry had descended from it and now spoke briefly with the vicar, with a few of the larger farmers. Several tenants tried to approach him to offer thanks, but Harrow gently steered them away, promising future meetings. The church bell began to ring. "The wedding," Mrs. Hale said somewhere behind Eleanor. "Come, girl. Cakes do not wait on dukes." The crowd began to move toward the church. As they walked, snatches of talk floated around them. "A fair man, I say. Whatever they say about lords, this one has a heart, or a head that knows unrest when it sees it. Either way, I will not complain. The Whitmores must be breathing easier today. And with a wedding as well." Eleanor let herself be carried along. The church was cool and dim as they entered. Flowers from the hedges and fields decorated the ends of the pews. The vicar stood ready, book in hand, face bright with anticipation and the importance of the day. Thomas went to the front with his mother and two of his brothers. Eleanor and her parents paused in the small anteroom to adjust her veil. "You look lovely," her mother said, eyes still red from earlier tears. "Your father will not be able to speak when he sees you. I hope he can at least say amen," Eleanor said faintly. Her father kissed her forehead. "You walk into this of your own will," he said quietly. "If at this moment you wish to turn back, say so." She looked up, startled. "Father, I mean it," he said. "Land is secure now. We will not hold you to a promise made under fear." Her heart thudded hard. "I gave my word," she said. "I will not make you a liar." "You could never do that," he said. "Only yourself." The vicar's wife poked her head in. "Is the bride ready?" she asked, eyes gleaming. "They are all waiting." "Yes," Eleanor said. "I am ready." The organ began a simple tune. She walked up the aisle with her father on her arm. The murmur of the congregation washed around her. Faces blurred slightly. She kept her eyes on Thomas. He looked handsome in his plain way. His jaw was set, but when he saw her, his expression softened. There was something like pride and fear mixed together in his gaze. Her father placed her hand in Thomas's and stepped aside. "We are gathered here," the vicar began, "in the sight of God." The words rolled over her. She knew them by heart. She had heard them spoken at other weddings, had murmured them under her breath as a child, had imagined hearing them herself one day with a calm, full heart. Now that day had come, and her heart was anything but calm. The vicar asked the traditional questions. "If any man can show just cause why they may not lawfully be joined together." Silence. He turned to Thomas. "Wilt thou have this woman to thy wedded wife," he said, "to live together after God's ordinance in the holy estate of matrimony?" "I will," Thomas said. His voice was steady. The vicar turned to Eleanor. "Wilt thou have this man to thy wedded husband?" Her mouth went dry. She opened it. The word did not come. Seconds stretched. The air in the church thickened. People shifted. A cough sounded somewhere. Mrs. Hale gripped her husband's arm so tightly his knuckles whitened. The vicar frowned slightly. "Miss Whitmore?" he prompted gently. "Do you will?" Eleanor's hands felt numb in Thomas's. She looked at him. His eyes met hers, full of questions, of hope, of a flicker of fear he could not quite hide. In that moment, the sounds of the morning seemed to return to her. The Duke's voice on the green, her father's quiet offer at the church door, Thomas's words on the lane days before. "I wish to know you choose me." She drew a breath. She began, then stopped. Thomas's fingers tightened around hers. "Eleanor," he whispered, "do not answer for anyone's sake but your own." The vicar shifted awkwardly. "My child," he said softly, "if you are unwell, we may pause." "I am not unwell," she said, and her voice sounded strange to her own ears. too clear in the hushed church. "I am more awake than I have been in a long time." She turned fully to Thomas, still holding his hands. "Thomas," she said, "you deserve a wife who can say 'I will' without hesitation, without wondering if she lies to herself." A murmur rose. He swallowed. "Do you lie?" he asked, almost too low for anyone else to hear. She felt tears burn at the back of her eyes. "I do not know," she whispered. "I care for you. You have been good to me. But when I stand here and think of years and years ahead, I do not know if what I feel is the sort of love a wife ought to offer." He looked stricken, but he did not look away. "Is there someone else?" he asked, voice raw. She thought of dark eyes, of a man on a horse by her bean plants, of a coat that had once borne a streak of mud. "There is something else," she said honestly. "Something I do not understand. I will not stand here and deny it in front of God, even to spare us shame." The vicar cleared his throat, clearly at a loss. "Miss Whitmore," he said, "perhaps we should—" Thomas spoke over him. "If we go on," he said quietly, "will you learn to love me as a wife should? Or will you always look away at something you left behind?" "I cannot promise," she said, tears now slipping down her cheeks. "And you deserve a promise." He closed his eyes briefly. When he opened them, there was pain there, but also a stubborn kindness. "Then I will not take your word," he said. "Not like this." He turned to the vicar. "Sir," he said, "we must stop." Gasps rippled. The vicar stared. "Are you certain, Mr. Hale?" he asked. "This is a grave decision. The whole village does not stand in my house every night," Thomas said. "They will forget in time. I would rather they talk of a broken engagement than of a broken marriage." Mrs. Hale made a small sound like someone had taken the breath from her. "Thomas, what are you doing?" she whispered. "What I must," he said. He turned back to Eleanor. "I release you," he said, voice shaking. "Not because I wish to, but because I will not bind you with half a heart." She sobbed once quietly. "I never meant to hurt you," she said. "I know," he replied. "You were honest. That will hurt less in the end than a beautiful lie." The vicar, flustered, closed his book. "Very well," he said slowly. "The ceremony cannot continue without free consent. We must conclude." Whispers rose louder now. Some faces were shocked, others sympathetic, others avid with the drama of it. Eleanor felt her legs wobble. Her father was there at once, steadying her. Her mother hovered, torn between grief and a strange, fierce relief. Henry stood at the back of the church. He had come in quietly, late enough that few had noticed. He had kept to the shadows near the door, intending only to witness, not to intrude. He had not expected this. As the words faltered at the front, as the silence thickened, he had felt something twist inside him. It was not satisfaction. He had never wished humiliation on anyone. It was something deeper and more complicated. Now, as the congregation began to disperse in restless groups, he stepped aside to let them pass. He did not move toward Eleanor. He had no right. He waited in the churchyard until the worst of the crowd had melted away. Some lingered, of course, hungry to discuss the scandal, but most drifted home, their curiosity sated for the moment. Eleanor slipped out of a side door with her parents. Her veil hung loose over her shoulders now, her hair slightly disordered, her eyes rimmed red. "Let us go home," her mother said. "You need to rest." "I need to breathe," Eleanor said. She saw the Duke then. He stood near the yew tree, hands clasped behind his back, expression grave. Her parents stiffened. "Your Grace," her father said, stiffly polite. "Mr. Whitmore." "Mrs. Whitmore," Henry said. "Miss Whitmore." Eleanor felt suddenly very tired. "Have you come to tell us you changed your mind about the leases?" she asked, a brittle edge to her voice. "It would suit the day." "No," he said. "My word stands." "Then you need not concern yourself with our private shame," she said. "We will manage without your observation." "Eleanor," her mother hissed. Henry's gaze did not waver. "I did not come to stare at misfortune," he said quietly. "I came to offer what comfort I can, though I know my presence may be the last thing you desire." Her father shifted awkwardly. "Your Grace," he said, "we are grateful for what you announced this morning, truly. But my daughter is raw. You must forgive her tongue." "There is nothing to forgive," Henry said. "She has been asked to bear much." He looked at Eleanor. I will not keep you long, he said. But may I speak with you alone? Only for a few minutes. Her mother began to protest. I will stand just there, Eleanor said, nodding toward the low wall. Within sight, if that helps. Her parents exchanged a glance. Finally, her father nodded. Do not be long, he said. Eleanor walked with Henry to the far end of the churchyard, where the ground sloped down slightly toward the fields. For a moment, neither spoke. You should not be here, she said at last. People will see, they will talk even more. They are already talking, he answered. I cannot control their tongues. I can only decide whether I will let fear of them rule my actions. You are a duke, she said. Their words cannot harm you. He gave a short, humorless sound. You would be surprised, he said. But that is not why I stayed. Then why? She asked. He met her eyes. To tell you that what you did in there was brave, he said. Painful but brave. It did not feel brave, she replied. It felt like tearing something apart with my bare hands. Sometimes that is what courage is, he said. The refusal to build a life on something you know is not sound. She swallowed. Thomas deserved better, she said. Thomas deserved the truth, he replied. You gave it to him. He may not thank you now. He may never thank you. But it is still better than living a lie that would rot you both from within. She looked away. You speak as if you know, she said. Have you lived such a lie, Your Grace? Henry, he said. She blinked. What? She asked. My name, he said. Use it, just this once. There is no one close enough to faint with outrage. She hesitated. Have you, she asked softly, lived such a lie, Henry? He drew a breath. I have signed papers I did not believe in, he said. Made allowances for men I despised because it served some larger interest. It feels very like what you described. I would not recommend it. She studied his face. Why did you void those clauses? She asked. Truly. I heard your fine words on the green. They were good. But what moved you? He held her gaze. Partly conscience, he said. Partly reason. Men who live under constant threat are not good partners to an estate. They exhaust themselves with fear. And the other part? She asked. He hesitated. Anger, he said unexpectedly. Anger that my uncle chose to tie knots around people's throats and call it wisdom. Anger that I almost signed a lease without reading it properly. And yes, he paused. Yes? She prompted. And yes, he said more quietly. The memory of a tenant's daughter who flung mud at a man she believed was only an obstacle, who stood in my field and told me she did it because it was the only power she felt she had. I do not wish to rule over people who think their only way to be heard is by such desperate gestures. A faint, twisted smile touched her lips. So I threw mud, she said, and you changed your estate. You threw truth, he said. The mud was merely the method. Silence fell between them again. At last he spoke, his voice lower. I will not pretend indifference, Eleanor, he said. Not now, when your life has just broken open in front of everyone. I have tried to keep my distance. To be only your landlord. I find I cannot be only that. Her heart thudded. You must not say such things, she whispered. Not today, not ever, perhaps. The difference between us, the difference is real, he said. I know. I was born to it. You were not. The world would find much to say. It already does, she murmured. He nodded. That is why I will not ask you for any promise, he said. Not now, perhaps not ever. I will not take advantage of your hurt or your confusion. I only wish you to know this. If you choose a life that does not include me, I will respect it. I will not punish your family. Your lease is secure, whatever your heart decides. Tears stung her eyes again. Why? She asked. You owe me nothing. I owe myself honesty, he said, and I owe you gratitude. You have made me look at my own power differently. That is no small thing. He took a small breath. If one day, he went on, when the dust has settled, when the whispers have tired, you find that your heart does not lean toward Thomas or any other man of your own station. If you find that it leans instead toward the man you once mistook for a wall in the road, then I would be honored to ask for it, properly, openly, before everyone. She stared at him, scarcely able to think. And if I do not, she asked, almost inaudible, then I will remain what I must be, he said. Your landlord, your neighbor. a man who once had mud thrown at him and learned from it. I will not press you, I will not hover at your gate. You will be free, Eleanor. Truly free. That is what I wanted you to have, even before I dared admit what I felt. She looked down at her hands. I do not know what I feel, she said. Not yet. Everything inside me is too shaken to be trusted. I would only distrust you if you claimed certainty today, he said gently. Let the day pass. Let weeks pass. Work your fields, walk your lanes. Listen to yourself without fear of loss, then decide. She lifted her head. Do people like us truly get to decide? She asked. You speak as if choices are right. It should be, he said. If my having power means anything, it should mean using it to open doors, not close them. She took a long breath. Thank you, she said quietly, for the leases, for what you said, for not asking anything of me now. You owe me no thanks, he replied. But I am glad if my choices ease your burden even a little. He stepped back. I will leave you, he said. Your parents are worried. Yes, she said, glancing toward them. They have had enough shocks for one day. He inclined his head. Eleanor, he said, her name gentle in his mouth. Whatever you choose, I wish you peace. And you, she said, I wish you a good harvest, in coins and in courage. A hint of a smile touched his face. That is the first time anyone has wished me courage, he said. I will try to deserve it. He turned and walked away across the churchyard, every line of him composed. She watched him go. When he vanished through the gate, she sank onto the low wall, hands folded in her lap, the cold stone pressing through her thin gown. Behind her the church door creaked. Voices murmured. The village would talk for weeks, perhaps months. Mrs. Green would feast on it. Thomas would have to hold his head high under questions. Yet beneath the churning shame and confusion, something else stirred. Her family would not be cast out. Their land was safe. Her future was no longer tied to a promise she had feared to keep. And somewhere on the hill above, a duke had spoken to her not as a creature beneath him, but as someone whose choice mattered. For the first time in her life, Eleanor felt the strange, frightening weight of a life that was truly hers to shape. Autumn settled over Rosebery in gentle turns. Days shortened. The fields, once busy and loud with harvest, quieted. Smoke rose from more chimneys. People turned their hands from scythes to mending tools, from taking in grain to counting what they had stored. Gossip lingered longer than the last sheaf. Some still talked about the broken wedding. Poor Thomas, they said, left at the altar. Poor Eleanor, others whispered, to walk away in front of everyone. A strange girl, someone would add. Too much mind of her own, too much heart, another would answer. Eleanor heard enough to know, but not enough to drown her. In the weeks after Michaelmas, she went back to work. She rose early, tended the garden, helped her father repair fences, sat with her mother by the fire as they mended clothes. Her hands were busy, and little by little, her thoughts began to sort themselves. The hurt in her chest did not vanish, but it changed. The sharp shame dulled. The fear loosened its grip. Her parents watched her closely. Do not let your mind fall into holes, her mother would say when she caught Eleanor staring at nothing. Think of what is before you, not what has gone. What is before me? Eleanor would answer quietly. That is the question. Her father said less, but he worked with new steadiness. He no longer flinched when post arrived from the manor. The knowledge that the lease trap was gone seemed to straighten his back more than any tonic. One afternoon, when the light was already slanting and the air held a bite, Thomas came to the gate. Eleanor saw him from the window and stepped outside before her mother could. He stood there with his cap in his hands, boots dusty, face a little older than it had been a month before. May I come in? He asked. Yes, she said, if you are certain you want to. I'm not certain of anything lately, he said, except that I cannot avoid you forever. We live in the same village, there are only so many lanes. She almost smiled. Then come, she said. They walked a little way down the path behind the cottage, where the hedge sheltered them from the road but still left the sky open. For a while they said nothing. At last, Thomas cleared his throat. My mother is beginning to speak to me again, he said. That is something. Has she forgiven me? Eleanor asked. No, he said honestly. Not yet. She may never. But she will speak of chickens in your hearing. That is her first stage of forgiveness. A huff of laughter escaped her. And you, she asked. Have you forgiven me? He looked at her for a long moment. I do not know if forgive is the right word, he said slowly. You did not betray me. You told me a hard truth. I do not like the truth, but I like lies less. She nodded. I never wished to hurt you, she said. You have been good to me. I was good to myself as well, he replied. A man ought to choose a wife who can look at him and say yes without swallowing her own heart. She swallowed anyway. Have people been very unkind? She asked. To you, I mean. Some, he said. There were jokes at first. Then they grew bored. Now they talk about the Duke again, about rents and repairs. Their lives are too full to keep my broken pride alive. I am sorry, she said softly. I am sorry too, he answered. Not that it ended, but that we did not know ourselves better before we stood there. She shifted her weight. Will you be able to marry someone else? She asked. One day. He gave a small, wry smile. I do not know, he said. Perhaps. There is a girl in the next village who bakes bread so well, I thought of proposing after the first loaf. My mother has already begun to plan it in her mind. Eleanor blinked. Truly. She is very fond of the girl's crust, he said. As for me, I will take my time. I have learned not to rush into churches. She let out a breath she had not realized she was holding. I want you to be happy, she said. And I want you to stop apologizing, he replied gently. You chose honesty, it hurt, but it was right. He hesitated, then went on. There are other things people say, you know, he said. About you, about the Duke. They think I do not hear, but I do. Her heart jerked. They are wrong, she said quickly. Nothing has happened. I believe you, he said. What I do not know is what may happen, so I will say this. Do not let pride keep you from something that might be good, simply because the village will talk. They will talk no matter what you do, let them. Marry a farmer or a duke or no one at all, but do it because it is what you truly want, not because it is the thing that makes the least noise. She stared at him. You give strange advice for a man I left at the altar, she said. I had time to think while my mother threw her apron over the kitchen chair, he said. I am stubborn, Eleanor, but I am not cruel. I do not want you to spend your life paying for one broken day. Her eyes stung. Thank you, she whispered. He shrugged, uncomfortable. If you end up a duchess, he added, do not forget who once pulled you out of a ditch when your boot got stuck. I will send you a pair of boots with gold laces, she said. Do not, he replied. They would only show the mud more. They both smiled then. The ache between them did not vanish, but it shifted into something gentler. When he left, she watched him go with a feeling she had not expected. Not guilt, not relief, gratitude. Weeks passed. True to his word, Henry did not hover. Eleanor saw him only at a distance, riding along the far hedge, speaking with a group of men near the mill, walking with Harrow toward a boundary marker. Once or twice their eyes met across a field or the churchyard, and they exchanged a small, polite nod. He did not seek her out. He kept his promise to give her space. That, more than any speech, made its way under her skin. When the first frost touched the edges of the grass, a new notice appeared at the inn. This one was less alarming. To all tenants and inhabitants of the Ashbourne estate, the innkeeper read aloud, you are invited to a harvest gathering on the grounds of Ashbourne Manor 1 week hence to mark the close of the season and the beginning of new terms. Food and music will be provided. Families welcome, signed Henry Blackwell, Duke of Ashbourne. Food and music, someone said. He means to feed us now as well as house us. Better than taxing us at the gate, another replied. I will go. I want to see the inside of that place before I die. Eleanor felt her stomach twist. At supper, her father laid the notice on the table. What do you think? He asked. Shall we go? Her mother pursed her lips. I have never felt easy under that roof, she said. It belonged to men who could turn us out with a flick of a pen. It belongs now to a man who tore up that pen, her father said, at least in part. He looked at Eleanor. What do you say, girl? He asked. Do you wish to go? She hesitated. If we do not, she said slowly, people will think we are sulking, or hiding, or ashamed. We are not ashamed, her mother said quickly. Of you, of what happened. Not any more. No, her father agreed. We have food on the table and a roof that will not leak this winter. That is more than many. We will not creep around like ghosts. Then we should go, Eleanor said. if only to prove to ourselves that we can." Her mother sighed. "Very well," she said. "I will iron my best dress, and pray I do not spill anything on the Duke's grass." The day of the harvest gathering was crisp and bright. Carts and people wound their way up the long drive to the manor, more than had ever done so at once. Children gaped at the size of the house. Men straightened their coats. Women smoothed their skirts and whispered to one another. Long tables had been set up on the lawn, covered with simple dishes: bread, cheese, roasted meats, apples piled high. A fiddler and a flautist stood ready near a corner of the yard. Eleanor walked between her parents, trying not to stare. She had seen the manor from the outside all her life, but never so close, never in such company. "It is only stone," her father murmured, sensing her tension. "Stone and wood like our cottage, only more of it." "And more windows to clean," her mother added. "I do not envy whoever does that." The Duke appeared not long after they arrived. He was not in formal dress, only a well-made coat suitable for the chill. His hair ruffled slightly by the breeze. He moved among his tenants with an ease that surprised some, speaking here and there, accepting thanks, answering questions. Eleanor kept her distance at first. She spoke with Thomas's mother, who was still stiff but polite, with the miller's wife, with a girl she had known since childhood. She helped a child whose shoelace had broken. She listened to old Mr. Tanner praised the Duke's decision on the leases for the third time that week. "Never thought I'd see it," he said, shaking his head. "A lord who reads a paper and throws it in the fire for our sake. Mark me, girl. That man is either very foolish or very wise. I have not yet decided which." "Perhaps both," Eleanor said. The music began. Children ran in circles. Some of the younger men and women tried a simple country dance. Laughter rose into the clear air. Eleanor went to fetch water from a barrel at the edge of the lawn. As she filled a cup, a shadow fell across the rim. "Miss Whitmore," Henry said. She turned. "Your Grace," she replied. They looked at one another, each taking in the changed lines of the other's face. She thought he looked a little less guarded, as if some tension in him had eased. He thought she looked steadier, as if the ground beneath her feet had firmed. "I'm glad you came," he said. "I almost did not," she admitted. "Why not?" he asked. She glanced around. "Too many eyes," she said, "too many tongues." "Ah," he said, "our old friends." She let out a small breath. "I did not want to give them more to speak of," she said. "I have provided them with stories enough." He studied her. "And yet you came," he said. "Yes," she answered, "because I am tired of living by their stories." A slow warmth moved through his chest. "May we speak over there?" he asked, nodding toward a quieter corner of the grounds near a row of old yews. "You will still be in sight. I will not give Mrs. Green the pleasure of fainting." "She would not faint," Eleanor said. "She would enjoy it too much." "True," he said. They walked together toward the yews. People noticed. Heads turned. Murmurs started, but no one followed. They stopped in the shade of the trees. The noise of the gathering softened there like waves heard from a distance. "Have these weeks been kinder to you?" he asked. "Kinder than the day at the church," she said. "That is not a high bar, but yes." "And your family?" he asked. "Relieved," she said. "My father sleeps better, knowing the lease will not swallow us whole. My mother scolds less. That is how we measure joy in our house." He smiled. "And you?" he asked. "Do you sleep?" "Sometimes," she said. "Sometimes my thoughts keep walking long after I lie down." "Where do they walk?" he asked gently. She met his gaze. "Too often," she said. "They walk up this hill." Silence settled between them again. Not empty, but full. "At the church," she said quietly. "You told me you would not ask for anything, that you would wait if you must for me to know my own mind." "I remember," he replied. "I have tried," she went on, "to imagine many futures. One where I marry another farmer. One where I never marry and live with my parents until their days are done. One where I leave this village altogether. In each of them, I tried to set you aside." "And?" he asked, his voice very soft. "And I could not," she said simply. "You appeared anyway. On the lane, in the fields, on the green. In my mind you kept being there, whether I wished it or not." His breath caught. "I told myself it was foolishness," she said. "Curiosity. The thrill of something that could never be. Then I watched you change the leases. I saw you speak to men who had always been afraid and treat them as if they mattered. I watched you keep your distance from me when you easily could have used my confusion to your advantage." She swallowed. "I came to understand," she said, "that I did not care for you because you are a duke. I care for you because of what you chose to do with being one." The words hung in the air. He took a small step closer. "Eleanor," he said, and her name sounded like something he had been wanting to say for a long time. "Are you sure? Truly sure? This path would not be easy. The world will not forget the distance between us. You would walk into a house that whispers, into rooms that expect you to know steps you were never taught." "I will stumble," she said. "I am used to that. The ground is not smooth in the fields either." He almost laughed. "I am serious," he said. "So am I," she replied. "I will not pretend I do not dread some of it. I know there will be times when I feel small among your people, but I also know this: when I think of walking any road, however rough, and I imagine you not being there, my chest hurts. When I imagine you beside me, it does not." He closed his eyes briefly as if steadying himself. "Do you love me?" he asked, not as a command, but as a plea for truth. She did not hesitate. "Yes," she said, "I do. With more fear than I expected, and more hope than I know what to do with, but I do." His hand moved as if of its own accord, then stopped halfway, hovering between them. "May I?" he asked. "Yes," she whispered. He took her hand. It was a simple touch, fingers closing around fingers, but it felt like the sealing of something long in the making. For a moment they simply stood, the noise of the gathering a distant murmur. Then he dropped her hand and stepped back. "If I had my way," he said quietly, "I would keep this between us a little longer. I would give you time to settle into the idea before the world pounced on it. But I am not only a man, I am a duke. If I mean to ask you to share my life, I must do it openly, or not at all." Understanding flashed through her. "You mean now?" she asked, pulse racing. "Yes," he said, "if you will let me." She glanced toward the lawn. "Before everyone?" she asked. "Yes," he said, "so that no one can call you a secret or a whim or a mistake. So that they will know from the beginning that this is a choice I make with pride." Her heart pounded against her ribs. "That will give them more to talk about than anything I have ever done," she said. "It will," he agreed. "Can you bear it?" She thought of lanes and mud and whispers, of the church and the green, of her father's tired shoulders, now straightening, of Thomas's words. "Do it because it is what you truly want, not because it is the thing that makes the least noise." "Yes," she said. "If you can bear it, I can." He nodded once, as if sealing a vow with himself. "Then come," he said. "Stand with me." They walked back toward the center of the lawn together. Conversations faltered. Music wobbled to a stop. People turned, eyes widening. Eleanor felt every gaze like a touch, but she kept her head high. Henry climbed onto the small wooden platform that had been used earlier for speeches about harvest yields and repairs. He turned and held out a hand to her. She placed her hand in his and stepped up beside him. A rustle went through the crowd. Mrs. Green's mouth dropped open. The vicar's eyes grew very round. Thomas, standing near his family, went very still. Henry let the silence gather. Then he spoke. "Friends," he said, the single word carrying more warmth than titles ever could. "You have been patient with my speeches today. I ask for your attention once more." A few nervous chuckles sounded. Most people simply stared. "When I came here months ago," he continued, "I knew little of this place beyond what was written in ledgers. Since then, I have walked your fields, visited your cottages, and listened to your worries. I have tried in my imperfect way to be a better landlord than you had reason to expect." Murmurs of agreement answered him. Someone near the front called, "You have, Your Grace." He shook his head slightly. "Still," he said, "the greatest change in me did not come from papers or maps. It came from people, from those who, by their courage, forced me to see myself differently." He looked down at Eleanor. "Among them," he said, "this woman stands first." A wave of whispers surged. Eleanor's cheeks burned, but she did not look away. "Some of you were there," he went on, "the day she reminded me that carriages have wheels for a reason. You have told the story in your kitchens and at your gates. You have laughed about the mud on my coat. So have I." A few cautious smiles appeared. But that moment, he said, was not only a joke, it was a rebuke I deserved. I stood in a road and expected the world to bend around me. She refused. In doing so, she showed me something about the power I carry and the responsibility that comes with it. He took a breath. In the months since, he said, I have watched her face hardship without bowing, speak truth without cruelty, and choose honesty over comfort, even at the altar of this very church. I have seen her work the land with hands as steady as any man's, and I have seen her care for her parents with a heart as strong as it is tender. He turned to her fully now. Eleanor Whitmore, he said, his voice quieter but so focused that every ear strained to hear, you once threw mud at me because you believed I was nothing more than a wall in your way. I stand before you now, hoping you might see me instead as a man willing to walk beside you. She swallowed, her throat tight. In front of those whose opinion matters most to me in this place, he went on, I ask you, would you do me the honor of becoming my wife? Not as a tenant's daughter rescued by a duke, but as a woman whose courage and conscience I trust more than my own. For a heartbeat there was no sound at all. The world seemed to narrow to his face, his eyes, his outstretched hand. She could feel her parents' breath catch somewhere in the crowd. She could feel Thomas watching. She could feel the entire village leaning forward as one. She stepped closer. You speak as if I would be doing you a great favor, she said, the faintest tremor in her voice. He started to reply, but she cut him off gently. The truth is, she said, you have already changed my life. Not with your title, with your choices. You tore up a clause that could have ruined us. You refused to use my mistake as a weapon. You listened, even when it would have been easier to command. For all that, I am already in your debt. A murmur ran through the listeners, softer this time. She lifted her chin. But I will not marry you out of gratitude, she said. I will not marry you because you are a duke. I will marry you because, when I imagine any future worth having, you are in it. A breath seemed to pass through the crowd. Yes, she said clearly. I will be your wife. If you can bear a duchess who once decorated your coat with mud and may on occasion speak her mind when you least expect it. Laughter broke out, startled and relieved. Henry's face, for a moment, held such open joy that it robbed him of his usual composure. I can bear it, he said, gladly. He took her hand in both of his. He did not kiss her there in front of everyone. Even bold hearts knew their limits. But the way he held her fingers, the way he looked at her, said more than any embrace could have. Around them, people reacted according to their natures. Some gasped, some smiled, some frowned. Mrs. Green looked as if she might either faint or explode. The vicar's wife clutched her husband's sleeve and whispered urgently in his ear. Eleanor's father pressed a shaking hand to his mouth, then lowered it and straightened his shoulders. Her mother wept openly, then laughed through her tears. Thomas stood very still, watching. After a moment he nodded once, almost to himself. Then, when Eleanor's eyes found his, he gave her a small, steady smile. Later, as the fiddler struck up a tune again and people began to move and talk more freely, Henry drew Eleanor a little aside to where her parents stood. Mr. Whitmore, he said, Mrs. Whitmore, I have asked your daughter to be my wife. I should like your blessing if you can give it. Her father looked him straight in the eye. You hold our land, he said. You own our roof. Now you ask for our girl. You have already done much I did not expect any man in your position to do. I can either fear you all my life, or I can trust that same man with something more precious than fields. He looked at Eleanor, then back at Henry. I will choose trust, he said hoarsely. You have my blessing. Take care of her, your grace. She is more stubborn than the soil, and twice as likely to argue with the plough. I know, Henry said, smiling. Her mother dabbed her eyes with her sleeve. I wanted her to marry safely, she said, to have enough to eat, and a husband who did not raise his hand to her. I did not dare ask for more. If she can have safety and love, and a bit of comfort besides, who am I to stand in the way? She looked at Eleanor. Be true, girl, she said. To him, but most of all to yourself. I will try, Eleanor said. She reached for her mother's hand. They squeezed each other hard. The wedding that followed some months later was not grand by London standards, but to Rosebery it might as well have been a coronation. The church was filled again, this time with flowers in winter colours and people who had had time to grow used to the idea. Some still muttered, but most were curious, some even excited. Henry stood at the altar in a dark coat, his usual composure touched by a visible human nervousness. Eleanor walked up the aisle on her father's arm once more. The dress she wore was finer than the cream gown of before, though still simple compared to what a duchess might have worn in the city. She had insisted on that. She wanted to be herself, not a doll dressed by other hands. This time, when the vicar asked her the old question, she did not hesitate. "I will," she said, and the words rang clear. When he asked Henry, the Duke's answer came just as firmly. "I will," he said, with a certainty that left no space for doubt. As they walked out of the church, arm in arm, bells ringing, villagers cheering or at least staring, Eleanor caught sight of Thomas in the crowd. He lifted a hand in brief salute. She returned it, gratitude in her eyes. The celebration moved to the manor lawn again. Tables groaned under food, music poured into the cold air, tenants danced with servants, children with grandparents, lines that had once been rigid, now bending, if not disappearing, at least softening. At one point, Henry and Eleanor slipped away from the noise for a few minutes, drawn toward the edge of the grounds where the drive met the lane. "Do you remember," he said, "our first meeting?" "How could I forget?" she replied. "You stood in the middle of the lane like a statue, and I mistook you for one that needed dusting." "Scrubbing, more like," he said. "I am surprised my valet did not resign." "You deserved it," she said, though her eyes shone. "I did," he agreed. "I thought the road existed for me alone. It took a handful of mud to correct that." He looked down at her hand in his. For the first time, there was a ring on her finger. Gold. Simple. Solid. "You have changed much in my life," he said quietly. "Not just my estate. Me." "Good," she said. "You needed changing." He raised their joined hands to his lips and pressed a kiss to her fingers, brief and reverent. "And you," he said, "have changed as well. Do you feel it?" She gazed down the lane past the hedges toward the village where her old life still lived, not lost, but woven into the new. "Yes," she said softly, "I feel bigger. Not taller. Just less afraid to take up space on the road." He smiled. "May we walk it?" he asked. "Just for a little, before someone drags us back to cut cake." She laughed. "Yes," she said. "Let us risk the scandal of a duchess with mud on her shoes." They walked down the lane hand in hand. Near the narrow bend where they had first met, they found a cart stopped awkwardly, blocking the way. A young labourer fussed with a wheel stuck in a rut, face flushed with frustration. "I am sorry, Your Grace," he said, startled. "I did not see you coming. The wheel, it stuck, and It is a difficult spot," Henry said calmly. "The lane is narrow. May we help?" The young man gaped. "Help?" he repeated. "No, Your Grace, I could not." "Nonsense," Eleanor said. "I have pushed more carts than he has fingers." Between the three of them, they freed the wheel. The cart jolted forward. The labourer stammered thanks. Still half convinced, he had stepped into a dream. As he drove off, Henry glanced at Eleanor. "Do you notice," he said, "how you no longer feel the need to throw anything?" She smiled. "I have better weapons now," she said. "Words, choices. A duke, a husband," he corrected gently. "Yes," she said. "A husband." They stood there for a moment, in the place where their quarrel had begun and their story had truly started. The road did not look different, but everything else did. Later, when they returned to the manor and the music and the warm press of people, Eleanor carried the image of the lane with her like a quiet vow. She knew there would be difficult days. There would be dinners with people who looked down their noses at her, letters from London full of expectations, decisions about land that would test her heart. There would be arguments with Henry when their strong wills met, tears when the world proved stubborn. But she also knew this. She had chosen this path with open eyes, not out of fear, not out of obligation, but out of love. And as she moved through the rooms of the house that had once loomed over her life, now calling it home, she felt a strength in her chest that had nothing to do with titles. In the years to come, people in Rosebery would tell many versions of the story. They would speak of the day a tenant's daughter threw mud at a stranger and found a duke instead. They would argue about whether it had been fate or folly, courage or madness. But Eleanor knew the truth was simpler and harder. A mistake had forced her to face herself. A humiliation had shaken her free of a life she had not truly chosen. and love had come not as a rescue from above, but as the joining of two people willing to lay down pride and pick up one another's burdens. Whenever she walked the old road and saw someone standing uncertainly in the way, she would remember the girl she had been, the man she had misjudged, and the future they had built from that messy, awkward beginning, and she would smile to think how a single, stubborn act had led her step by step to a life where her heart at last was entirely her own. Thank you so much for listening to this story all the way to the end. We hope it moved you as much as it moved us while telling it. We'd love to hear your thoughts. Leave us a comment telling us where you're listening from and what you liked the most. Rate this story from 0 to 10. What score would you give it? If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and leave a like as a show of support. That really motivates us to keep creating and sharing more stories full of emotion and life lessons. And before we go, we want to remind you that an exciting and heartwarming story recommendation will appear on the final screen. If you'd like to enjoy it, just click on the video. Thank you once again for being here, and we'll see you in the next story.